Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the admissions forum. Some housekeeping notes include staying on mute if you are not speaking and typing questions or comments in the chat. If you would like to respond to comments or questions posted, please unmute and feel free to do so. The session will end at 11:45 a.m. Central Standard Time, and our moderator today is Blake Bedso from Arkansas Tech University. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Angela, and hello to everybody joining us. It looks like we've got a big crowd coming in right at 11, so that's great. So like Angela said, you're welcome to stay on mute or unmute your camera, but I'd love for this to be a discussion if people want to unmute their mics when they have a comment or a question to throw out to the group, and we can facilitate things that way. If you would prefer to stay muted and submit questions to the chat, I'll be happy to throw that out to the group as well. So I'd like to start everyone just by asking what they have thought about the virtual conference format so far, and maybe talk about your favorite session or just anything like that. And I'll throw that out to the group. Not everybody at once.
You don't want us, do you want us to say it or type it?
I prefer a conversation.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. This is Janet Adams at Jackson State University. I have really enjoyed the virtual conference. The sessions that I've attended, managing pandemic pressures, and then also supporting long-term enrollment strategies. I gathered a lot of good information from that session. So I think the virtual conference, I was excited about it. So I think the virtual conference is really good. I have been to live events, and just being able to glean the same type quality information virtually has really been a blessing. And then the way that you all have allowed us to register as many people as we like, that has also been a blessing. So I have really enjoyed the sessions that I have attended.
Great, thank you. Anybody else with general thoughts on the conference? I saw another note come in the chat that, glad that SACRAO was able to organize this virtual option. And a question from Bobby that says, missed the session on transfer articulation. Will those be available at some time? Angela, my understanding is that the recorded sessions will be available through the next year.
I believe most of the sessions will be available online. We'll send out communication when it's ready and posted. Hopefully all of them are recorded, but we'll let you know after the conference.
Yeah, so hopefully we will have those recorded sessions. I think at a minimum, we will have most of the slide decks available for everyone. So.
And I think the session that I enjoyed a lot was Courageous Allies, which was a panel that had a lot of different voices. So we were able to hear from a lot of different speakers from all around. And I believe even some outside of SACRAO as well. So that was really nice.
Great. Any other general thoughts about the conference, or I guess, does anybody want to talk about, so this is the admissions forum, so it's really covering everything that's not, registrar. Then we have the registrar forum running concurrently. Anything going on in your world of admissions or recruitment that you would like to throw out to the group?
This is Janet again. I do have a question I'd like to kind of pose to the group. I know that in one of the sessions, it was discussed about virtual tours. Wanted to just kind of hear from the group if anyone is moving back towards in-person tours at this time. Is something that we are considering, and we are considering keeping it small to groups of 25 or less. And we are requesting that they provide proof of negative COVID tests within the last 72 hours in order for them to participate in the tours. and just kind of wondering if there are other people who are going back to in-person tours or have already gone back to in-person tours, and maybe any feedback that anyone else has that could be helpful with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's something we're all probably struggling with. I'll throw what we're doing out there at Arkansas Tech. So we only postponed our in-person tours for a couple of weeks back in the spring. But what we had to do was severely change the way we did those tours. So we ask guests to bring one family member, and that's it. The groups are 10 or less because of kind of the COVID restrictions that our entire campus is operating under for meetings and things. We do a temp check when the guests arrive. We have not gotten to the point of asking for a negative test yet. That does come up. And then we've somewhat, the residence halls, for example, we're not able to go tour those because of, again, some of the pandemic restrictions. So we're doing them and have been doing them for some time, but it's a severely kind of toned down experience from what our tour would have been otherwise.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I am with the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and we only start doing tours for a very short amount of time. But on our campus, unless you were in your private vehicle, you were required to have on a mask at all times, outside, everything. And so all the all the tour attendees have to have on a mask. And I think you can only have one family member as well, but I've not heard anything about the testing, but we don't go into any buildings. It's all outside, and the tour groups are, I think 30 is the maximum, but I think the masking has made the biggest difference for us, is that they have to have it on outside, inside, everything.
What about, well, here's a question that came in the chat. Oh, it's a comment on the tour. So it says, I work at Auburn University at Montgomery, and we've offered in-person tours since July. Tour times twice daily and only allow one student plus guests on each tour. We go into buildings and vacant rooms in the residence halls. Masks must be worn at all times. We also offer virtual tours weekly. So
I guess my question for Auburn would be, since you only allow one student and one guest, you must have quite a few ambassadors or people that conduct the tours.
So I'm Auburn University at Montgomery, so we are much smaller than Auburn. In Auburn, about 5,000 students versus their 25,000 students. I have 10 tour guides that work in our office. They're 4 to 5 of them in and out each day. They work up to 20 hours a week, and we do pay them.
Okay.
a question from the chat is, how is the tour attendance with requiring a negative test?
We have actually not started them. That's why I was asking the group, because we actually were scheduled to start them on February 16th, but in Mississippi, we had a snowstorm, we call it. So we were unable to get out all last week. And so we have moved our date to March. But I can say that with the negative COVID test, it worked really well with what we call our one-stop shop registration, where we probably serviced over 1,000 students over a 4-day period, maybe 4 or 5 days. And so they had to bring proof of the negative COVID test with them, or our health center gave them rapid testing. And it actually went very well, because even with our virtual tours, the health center will be the ones that will interpret the test, because we're not medical professionals and we don't know what we're looking for. So it will kind of be like a drive-through. They will drive through the parking lot. They have a designated space for the participants to come. And if they have already taken a COVID test, they just need to show it to them. If not, they will do the rapid, or I think that's what you call it, the rapid COVID test. And so with our one-stop shop registration, it made the staff and the students and everybody who was working there feel a lot more comfortable knowing that they had all been tested before being able to come into the open arena style registration to be serviced. So for us, it has worked fine. Our campus is about 7,000 students. So a lot of those are online students and probably wouldn't be coming to campus anyway. But over that period, when we serviced about 1,000 people, I was more comfortable with it knowing that they had taken the test as an employee. And so the parents and the students, I think at first, some of them had issues with, going to the health center to get their test read. But I think they understood the premise of all of us being safe at the same time. So we didn't have much opposition to it.
Great, thank you. Sarah Hopper wrote in the chat that they have 120 tour guides, so they're able to space well, and that if someone wants to meet with a counselor after, they are still doing it with a Zoom meeting only, even if the student's on campus.
Okay.
I'll throw one out to the group until some other questions come in, but for schools that are somewhat hybrid or remote now, do you already have plans to be more return to normal in the summer or fall, or are you gearing up for another virtual heavy semester?
Well, I do know that at Jackson State, we are planning to be more face-to-face in the fall. Right now, I think I was told that we're probably about 70% on virtual, 30% face-to-face. But in the fall, we're going to try to flip that and have the campus open again, depending on what the situation is. That is our plan, though.
Great, thank you.
At Austin P, they are saying we are returning to regular modalities at this time. Of course, that could be flipped at any time, but they are putting out right now that we will go back to regular modalities for fall 2021.
Great. Nanette from FIU said the school was about 20% on campus in the fall, 50% in the spring, and will likely increase for summer fall 2021. Chad writes that summer is still a combo with remote and masks for fall on campus, likely with masks, but less social distancing. That's from UA Fayetteville. What about this spring for your, kind of admit yield events? Is anybody doing in-person admitted student events? And what does that look like with all the COVID restrictions?
We have not done any in-person events. Everything we've done has been virtual. We've had virtual high school day. We're having junior preview day. We will be having a live event on April 7th. That will be our first event for this year as a live event. We will actually be having a transfer student event, and it will be a live in-person event.
Great.
And I don't know the details of what they are requiring. So I mean, I'm not sure what they'll be requiring in terms of whether they have to prove negative COVID or anything like that at this point, but that will be our first live event.
Yeah, we had, and I see Meredith, I think is in here. She may want to speak more to this. We had our big in-person event. We had to break it over 3 days instead of doing it in one with much smaller groups than we were used to, but we had it scheduled for last week and the snow and ice got us as well. So we actually had to cancel all 3 days and are looking at shifting to more of a, admitted student day, like you said, probably end of March or April, where maybe some of the group size restrictions are lifted, but it's a balancing act for sure.
Right.
At Auburn Montgomery, we did host an in-person open house event in October with very limited capacity. Only about 40 students were allowed. They were allowed 2 guests. All the chairs were put in groups of 3 and then set socially distanced 6 feet apart. Masks were worn. They were split into 2 ballrooms according to the college of their major. And then our guest speakers rotated rooms instead of the students and their parents rotating rooms, which is what we would have normally done. And then our brow session for clubs and organizations and departments was held outside on our quad. And we plan to do 2 more this spring, as well as an in-person admitted student event at the end of April. And that will be outside.
This is Meredith with Arkansas Tech. So I have a follow-up question on that. Did you have any issues with people bringing extra guests? Again, ours has been postponed, but that was one of our concerns.
We had a few people with extra guests, and we just allowed them, to come on in as long as they followed the rules of wearing their masks and everything. Not everyone brought guests or brought 2 guests with them, so we just pulled the extra chairs and put them in groups near each other. Did you hear me? Was I on mute? I'm sorry.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. I thought for a moment I was still muted.
I have another question, if it's okay to interject another question at this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my question is about placement. I know a lot of schools have gone test optional because of the inability of students to take the ACT or SAT test, and some schools may have already been optional prior to that. We are currently test optional, and just kind of wondering what schools are doing for placement for those students on your campuses, because we do have something that we administer called the AccuPlacer, and I know all of us have probably heard of that. So I was just wondering what other schools are doing that may have already been test optional and may have some other ways of placing the students. I know that in admissions, that's not really something we deal with, is the placement, but I've kind of been concerned about it. Just kind of wondering what other schools are doing for placement when they don't have a test score, because we place students basically based on their ACT score in those sub areas, reading, English, math, etc. And so just kind of wondering what others are doing.
Offer what we're doing at the University of Montevallo. Our math faculty created a placement exam that our incoming students who don't have an ACT or SAT on file, they will take that math placement course through their Canvas account.
Okay.
Audrey, is there something, I'm sorry, this is Pamela Bowie from Arkansas State University. Audrey, is there something equivalent for the English or the reading to the test that you're talking about that the math department has developed? Because our math department is actually working on a separate placement exam as well. But just wondering if the English or reading departments have something equivalent.
We did not hear, and we do not offer remedial courses at Montevallo. So students are automatically placed into English 101 unless they've brought in dual enrollment or AP credit. So we really only needed a replacement or something in place for math.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Kelia Cersei, I hope you said your name right, says that we're placing based on GPA. Would you like to talk to the group more about that? I'm interested to hear about the GPA placement.
Yes, it's Keila Cersei, but it's okay. Yes, I'm with Southwest Tennessee Community College in Memphis, Tennessee. Currently, we are using the students' last final high school GPA, and it is on a threshold of, I believe, it's 2.7 or below. They will be placed in support, which is our remedial level. If their GPA was above a 2.7, they will automatically be placed in college level courses starting in the first semester. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So was that a policy driven by the COVID environment, or were you already doing that?
Yes, that was implemented once COVID started. We also do have a testing center that administers the AccuPlacer should the student have a GPA below that threshold. And we, my understanding, our testing center has a system where they can take that test online.
Great, thank you. Chad Cox put in the chat that they're asking for the test post-admission, but have to have a test, either ACT, SAT, or AccuPlacer for enrollment purposes, and that a two-year school they work with uses a mix of the high school GPA, test scores, and concurrent work. And then Martina Brewer says the University of Mississippi is using the AccuPlacer and Alex for math placement. We are doing the same thing at Arkansas Tech, asking for a post-admission test and offering the AccuPlacer on campus to students that choose to go that route. If your merit aid formally required an ACT or SAT score, have any of your institutions changed that to also be test optional?
Can you repeat that, Blake?
If your merit aid programs, if you had ACT scholarships, for example, have any schools went test optional for aid as well?
We actually did at Jackson State. We have two options. For example, we have a presidential scholarship, provost scholarship, heritage, and so forth. And so for our option one, it is for students who come in the traditional way. They have everything they need. So for our option two, for students that do not have a test score, the GPA requirement was actually raised. And also they have to submit a video and they have to answer certain questions. I'm not sure because I'm not a part of the scholarship team that came up with the questions. I do know that the question asked about leadership, community service, and maybe one other area. So they have to do a short video in place of the test. And so we do have students that don't have the test score, but they are allowed to apply for those merit scholarships. But the GPA requirement is higher for the students who do not have the ACT score. For example, for presidential, your GPA may need to be a 3.5. And for the ones without the ACT, it may need to be a 3.75. I'm not really sure because I'm not looking at it, but I did help with developing that. It's just been a while and I haven't really, served on that since that time. But anyway, that's what we're doing at Jackson State. We did allow students who did not have test scores to apply for our scholarships.
Great, thank you. Another question from the chat from Kelsey Townsell wants to know if anybody is having issues with students doing poorly in their dual enrollment, either from your school or from other schools. Freshman standards only look at high school work and test scores, but they still have to give us their dual enrollment work. And students may be bringing in a very low college GPA from their dual enrollment work. Is anyone else seeing that?
This is Melissa Johnson from Aiken Technical College. My office oversees dual enrollment for our campus now. And we have seen a decline. And so we've implemented a couple of interventions through our Student Success Center, assigning an academic coach to those students specifically, and also with having the embedded tutors in some of their classes that they're taking. So we're trying to mitigate and help them navigate some of the issues, but we have seen a decline, but we have put some stopgap measures in place, hopefully to offset what we've been seeing this semester, or saw last semester.
Thank you. So we have a pretty substantial concurrent population at Arkansas Tech. We saw a drop in enrollment in our concurrent classes this spring. So far, I haven't noticed, a statistically significant decline in the GPA. I'll be curious to see how this spring's classes turn out, because that's something we've thought about. But we actually saw a dip in the actual enrollment last fall and this spring.
I hope I have one final question. This has been really good. You guys are really helping me today. My last question is about the alternative grading that students opted for in the spring of last year is what I'm seeing mostly. Just wondering how schools are handling that. We really actually just got our first student who is requesting to have those grades added to their transcripts. So now we are developing a policy for that. Where I'm not, academic affairs is, but kind of wanted to hear what some of the other schools are doing. For example, I actually think it was a transcript from Auburn that had, I can't remember it now because it was a couple transcripts. One was they may have had S's and SPs or some type of coding that says this grade can be an A through a C, and then this grade can be a C minus, a D, or a D minus. And so we're looking at it right now. So kind of wanted to hear what other schools are doing. I've done a little bit of research, and some schools do have policies already around this, and just kind of wanted to hear what other schools might be doing for those grades that are not straightforward, A, B, or C. It could be satisfactory or P for passing. Just kind of wanted to hear what the group might be doing with that.
That's a great question.
Here at AUM, we have pretty much always, I mean, we're seeing a lot more of it because of this past spring, but we have always kind of accepted whether it's military credits or whatever the case may be that don't necessarily have A through F type grades attached to them. So, I mean, whatever is on that transcript is the way we bring it in. So yes, if somebody passed the class, but maybe wasn't comfortable with the grade that was associated with it, so yes, they changed their C to an S for satisfactory, and we still bring it in as a 3-hour credit. We just truly put an S out there on the transcript showing that it was, you know, passed with an S, and so that way it has no GPA calculation attached to it, but it would be earned hours.
Thank you, Ronnie. Anybody else? Okay. Another question from the chat is, how is everyone conducting English second language placement testing? FIU says they are still requiring the TOEFL or the IELTS, but are also allowing Duolingo as well. So it sounds like everybody is accepting Duolingo now, and that the students are enjoying that. Along with that, how has everyone's international pipeline shaped up? Are you sensing impact from the last year, be it the COVID environment or maybe the political changes? And if you did see a decline, is your fall 21 looking better in the international market?
This is Lindsay Sullivan at Nations University, and actually all of our students are online. We're pre-pandemic, we're an online university, and a lot of our students are international. And we did see a big dip because, especially in like our African countries, they were often using internet cafes to do their work, and that was no longer an option during COVID. So we are seeing the numbers come back up, but yes, we did see a dip with COVID.
Audrey said it's been really hard. Most of them have not been able to get here and have opted for online classes until they can. We're still seeing the same top of the funnel interest, but we had some substantial yield declines in the fall 20 class, so we're trying to correct that for fall 21. For everyone that's accepting Duolingo, is it temporarily due to COVID, or do you think you'll accept it in the future moving forward.
George Mason is looking at making it long-term, but has not been determined yet.
Audrey says Montevallo, it'll be permanent. Ronnie says AUM, it'll be permanent. FIU's extended it through spring 22 to be reviewed again. Good deal. I think I'm about out of questions. Does anybody else have anything they want to throw out to the group? Chelsea from Nashville State says, are there any populations that you've seen leaving your funnel? That's a great question.
I'll jump in there, Chelsea. I don't know if we see anyone leaving the funnel right now. I just think COVID has changed the traditional behaviors that we are used to. And so it's really hard to say if they're leaving a funnel or if they're just on pause or taking a temporary leave. Nothing that's certainly a trend, I would say, from the University of Arkansas.
Thank you, Chad. I'll ask a slightly different question, but so, Doug talked about re-engaging the fall 20 students that didn't enroll anywhere. Has anybody done a lot of that outreach so far? And are you having any success with possibly getting those lost students from fall 20 back into your pipeline for 21? Audrey says that Montevallo did an email outreach, but didn't really see much interest. And I've heard that for some other colleagues as well. Is your yield engagement for your fall classes this year lagging behind? I know that's what we see nationally, is that there's still interest in the top of the funnel, but perhaps there's some hesitancy for students to commit as early as they have done in the past. I'm curious if this group is seeing that, or if your fall classes are still on target with that next step of engagement, whether it's advising or housing, those other types of next steps.
Actually, ours seems like it's kind of on target compared to last year, because we compare the numbers of those who have responded to the IE, and it's kind of trending in the same direction for right now. But that's kind of good to know, so that we can kind of use some foresight, into just making sure we keep those students engaged. But so far, it's been pretty close to last year.
Great, thank you.
Mason has an odd situation that, excuse me, for fall, our apps are down, especially freshmen. Transfers are okay across the board, but for freshmen, our apps are down, and even our admit numbers are down, but our IEs are up so considerably. So people who are applying are intending to come. So it's an interesting thing for us.
Great, thank you. Got a couple of communication questions. So Angela asks, do you all think students are burnt out from all the communication they're receiving from us? And then Nanette asks, how many institutions use two-way texting as a component to their engagement?
I'll chime in. I think that students are definitely burned out, especially on Zoom and virtual events. That's been a real struggle for us, and I've heard that from so many others. And we do use two-way text, and we use a Mongoose, which is, I think, a pretty common higher education platform, and we love it. It's been a really great tool, especially during the pandemic.
We also use Mongoose at Arkansas Tech, and again, we do love it. And we'll send the same type of message via email as opposed to text and get far greater response via text.
Yeah, so a lot of comments that people are using texting. Email is much less responsive, but texting has been a big plus. Signalvine is another big player in that. Angela says NC State uses AdmitHub. So there are a lot of options out there. But I agree. I mean, the response rates to those texts is sometimes 3, 4, 5-fold more than just the email alone. Valerie says Embry Riddle does it from the CRM. AUM uses AdmitHub. Angela asks if we have used more video content, not Zoom, but more video content for your outreach this year. That's a good question.
This is Pamela at Arkansas State University. Yes, we've had to incorporate much more video just because students haven't been able to visit campus, and our PAC preview, our open house in the fall, was all virtual. And so, there was a big push to really get our academic folks to try to get on board with creating more video, because usually when you come on campus, they want to see facilities, they want to talk to someone from an academic department. And so our deans actually got on board and all did like kind of 2-minute intro videos for each college. But yeah, Chad, I definitely agree. It takes a lot of time to create. So we've kind of been building that library slowly to get, a good kind of depository of videos that we can use in outreach. But, a lot of our emails have shifted from, text, even bullet points, to just like, here's a video, here's like 2 to 3 sentences about what you might see in the video, watch the video. And then we are a Slate institution, so we can actually see, who's clicking through and watching the video and open the emails and everything. So it is time consuming. It takes a lot of time to create that content, and you don't always know how students will respond. But just because we just can't have people on campus like we have in the past, we're trying to give them something visual to kind of replace what they may see if they were on campus.
Great, thank you. Chelsea Morgan from Nashville State says they do orientation as a YouTube video and are starting to do social media to teach students how to apply and check for verification. And I agree with all the comments. We are lucky to have marketing and communication within our division, but it's such a resource suck, and then it takes priorities away from the rest of campus. It's been a really delicate balancing act with doing more video and more social engagement along with everything else, and just all the updates that are required from COVID, right? And your weekly addresses or whatever your campus may be doing for that. Angela has another great question. What about using user-generated content from students to send out to your prospects and admins? Is anybody using their current students for more video?
I'll chime in. We are starting to, I should say, our marketing team has some ambassadors that they have gathered, and they're doing some content that way. And some of our tour guides, we are working on them adding digital content, but that is a goal. I wouldn't say we're quite there yet.
do you think the prospective students or admitted students are resonating more with the authentic, like current, like student generated content, or more with like the institutional content? Has anybody seen any like differences in engagement? And this could mean like Instagram Live or Facebook Live type of events or videos as well.
Nanette says they're including students in testimonials on Instagram and adding student panel sessions at virtual open house. I think that's a great question about, are you actually seeing more engagement and more yield from those efforts?
I think another question is, what are some of the takeaways, I guess, from COVID that you're going to continue even after post-pandemic?
Nanette put in the chat, we are definitely going to continue virtual office hours and likely more information sessions through Zoom. Are others considering any permanent, more permanent remote policies or virtual office hours?
I would say we'll definitely keep some of our new virtual options that we've added in the last year.
Kelsey says creating electronic versions of our forms has been great for turnaround time. One more chat question. Do any of you think that the situation may change how you do recruitment events in the future? I think that's a great question. Do you foresee, large in-person fairs coming back anytime soon? I agree, Angela. I think we're getting zoomed out too. I've got 11:43, so we can go ahead and call it. Definitely appreciate all the conversation. This has been great. Thank you for your time. We hope to see all of you at the 12 o'clock business meeting to close out the conference. So any closing? All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at the business meeting.